Okay, so it's me again. So I've got my own session now. Yay. It's good, isn't it? So the idea of this session, it's a bit of a hot topic at the minute. So the right tools for the right people. So we assume within our businesses we've already got all the right people, and we're just trying to work out what tools to pair them up with. And that should be super easy, shouldn't it? Because we've decided we love Microsoft. Yeah, we love Microsoft, and we bought all the latest licenses. So then it should be easy. We'll just give the people the tools, and we'll all work together, and we'll probably won't even need to work on Fridays. We'll be that efficient. So in reality, it doesn't quite work like that, does it? So I've got a few slides to kind of talk you through. Let's see what we've got. Oh, I've got this as a grand entrance. Notice no one else is doing much PowerPoint animation. Just sort of. I've got two favourite ones. That's one of my favourite ones. Okay, so I've already done that. So some of the sessions that we did earlier were kind of a combination where you had a hybrid of SharePoint and Office 365, and some of you had just on-premises SharePoint. So I'm going to try and focus on Office 365 and particularly talk about all the newest things that are happening at the minute. Yeah, so I'll try and be quite thorough, but particularly to talk about some of the newest things that are happening at the moment. I know you're going to get excited during the session, but we'll do most of the questions at the end if that's okay. If anyone is desperate for a question, we might do one or two, but yeah, okay, great. So why am I a good person to talk to you about these tools? Well, for over 15 years now, I've been helping people use all the Microsoft tools. So to begin with, I would have been teaching things like Excel, building macros, then Access databases. And then around about 2007, I guess, I came into SharePoint, and then that's naturally led me through the versions of SharePoint and into Office 365. Yeah, and I think my official title is a trainer at Combined Knowledge, but I get to write books, create videos, help customers make decisions about what they're going to do in Office 365. Most of my time spent with the end users, so actually using the tools, but I also get to help people make decisions about maybe which things they'll switch on and off, some of the admin controls that are there as well. So it's all very practical, yeah, quite down-to-earth practical stuff. I like to have a favourite word of the week because it kind of keeps me young. It's working real well, not losing too much hair. It's a bit grey, but keeps me young. So my word of the week I've made up this week. I think it's okay, isn't it, making up words? So it's groupification. Groupification. So we've had like appification, where everything was an app, and we've had other fications. But groupification, has anyone come across this yet in Office 365? Microsoft are obsessed with this thing called groups. So a few nods and a few no's. So we're going to see that pretty much whatever you try to do, one way or another, you're going to get groups nowadays. Yep, so we'll explain what that means and kind of why all roads lead to groups, so we can kind of make sense of that. And I think it is a good thing. You know, whenever you see something new at first, I'm quite old-fashioned. It takes me a while to change direction. But we'll see that a lot of these new changes that are coming in, as soon as you've had time to sit down and use them and try them, actually they are good. Right, so a couple of little things just to work out first of all. What do people want? Do they want loads of choice? No, normal people don't want loads of choice. They literally just want to know one way of doing something. So there's good news with that. So as we go into Office 365, we're going to see a lot of the existing tools, such as SharePoint and OneDrive, for example, are being simplified. It's got to be a good thing, right? So take the tools that are in loads of businesses and simplify them. What form does that come in? Well, things like we lost the ribbon. So for years in a document library, we had these ribbons across the top of a library, and there'd be maybe 50 buttons or more at the top of the screen. As a site owner and a really keen SharePoint person, I loved it. Look at all these things I can do, and ask me anything. I bet I can do it in SharePoint. Most of the users were not so keen. Yeah, especially if I just sat down with them for half an hour and tried to win them over on SharePoint. Was half an hour enough to really get someone excited about SharePoint and up to speed? Probably not. A few days probably to win them over, until they get to the level of knowledge where they can start to do kind of interesting things with SharePoint. So it wasn't a quick win, was it? Things like Skype, things like Outlook, loads of other stuff was quick win. You could start using it within a few minutes and get benefits, but SharePoint was, one of the more difficult ones. Okay, so simplifying things like SharePoint has got to be good. At the same time, Microsoft have said, great, we're making progress, we're simplifying SharePoint, that's got to be good. Let's bring out some new tools. Let's give them some cool names. Let's make some mobile apps. So we've got existing tools being simplified, we've got new tools kind of being bolted on left, right and centre, all sorts of power things. Not Power Flow, that would have been too much sense. We've got Flow, Power BI, Power Apps, all these different things available to us, so we need to make sense of that. As a company, it might well be that you decide to switch some of these things off to begin with, like in phase 1 of your kind of migration to Office 365, but we'll try and make sense of what each of the things is good for. Okay. Everyone with me so far? It's just hot. I feel like I'm doing a good job, but it's just hot in the room, and that's what's kind of keeping it back. I'm going to take that as a sign. It's just the temperature. Yeah, it's just the heat. I feel like I'm doing fine. It's okay. That's what my therapist tells me anyway. So people have this issue. They log into Office 365. You've bought these licenses, and you just see loads of tiles. There's not just 2 or 3. There's loads of them, and there is massive overlap between what they can all do. So how do we deal with it? Well, what we could do, and this, some of you might have heard me talk about this in the last session that we did in London, we could break all these things down into raw ingredients. Yeah? So if you think about when you go into a restaurant, kind of behind the scenes of these fantastic things we buy off the menu are just the raw ingredients, and it's those combinations of ingredients that then give us these recipes that we buy into and pay ridiculous money for. Anyone bought food in London recently? Yeah. So if we just saw the raw ingredients, we probably wouldn't be that excited, but that combination of stuff together is what's going to help us. So the ingredients, and these are in no particular order, so let me just drop these on. I actually didn't put them all on, but there's a lot of them. Yeah, some of them are really old, been around for 15 years or more, and they've been updated, and some of the things have only come out in the last 12 months or less. Okay, so we've got these raw ingredients. I will talk about each of those, so I'll do my best to talk about each of those and a few extra things that are not on there, and just try and highlight some key things that they do that are unique against the other functionality. That's how we're going to help make our decisions. But Microsoft have started to move on as well. They're not really that bothered about just individual products anymore. They've took the next step. So this is where the groups comes in, or groupification. On a menu, it would be the house special. You go into a restaurant, it's a nice restaurant, you can't decide what to have, what's the special? I just want a quick start, let's have the special. Does anyone ever buy the house special? No, you normally know what you want, you people that know what you want. For a lot of people, they just have the house special because they can't decide. So Microsoft have done that for us. They've given us this thing called Office 365 groups. So there's lots of different ways that this can happen, but let's say Microsoft have convinced us that we want an Office 365 group. When we do that, we get all these tools combined together. So instead of having to think about, right, do I need to use Mail, do I need to use Skype, do I need to use SharePoint, when I actually opt in as an individual or a team, I can actually opt into having an Office 365 group, and it means that I get all these things. Do we think they'll be centrally managed? Do you think we'd only let 1 or 2 people in the company build those? What would make sense? No, it'd be cool if everyone could do it, right? Let's just all be able to do it. So anyone in the whole company that has a license can go in and they can just get a new group. And how would they do that? Let's just put it as a button in Outlook. So you send in an email and you think, you know what, I just want a whole cool place to collaborate. I want to have a bit of SharePoint, a bit of Skypey stuff. I want some workflowy bit, a bit of formsy bit. I'll just order up a house special group. Throw in my colleagues in there. They don't even have to all be from my department. If I just add in any colleagues from any department, doesn't have to deal with any of the normal boundaries, don't have to phone IT and say, is it okay? I can just go ahead straight from Outlook and create one of these things. That's cool, isn't it? So why don't you like it? It's because you're all the IT people and the decision makers and the governance people, the people that traditionally have had control over this stuff. So there is good news. Some of this stuff can be restricted down a bit. So in the next session, we'll be talking about that. Yeah, but by default, this is what will happen. Are people excited about this in your businesses? No. People might not have noticed the button yet, or they might have clicked it and all this stuff appeared and then they cancelled it. So just again, having this stuff it's not a quick win. I don't think just having it. We need to tell people in the business, okay, perhaps we've got traditional SharePoint, which is very structured and very managed, and we do things like deal with policies and procedures in there. Yeah, and we have processes that we go through with approval, check out, check in, publishing, great. But then we can also have these quick start house special groups. No one else calls it house special, that's just me, I'm afraid, so I wouldn't use that phrase after the session, I want to know what you mean. And actually, I've kind of been won over by these a little bit already. I was definitely skeptical to begin with, but I can love it because it's basically still got SharePoint behind the scenes. Yeah. So a lot of the core things that we already know about, email, OneNote, PowerPoint, Excel, Word, SharePoint, basically that's what makes up these groups. And then there's a newer thing at the bottom called Planner. Is anyone excited about Planner yet? If you're nodding, that's not excitement. No, okay. Oh, is that excited? No. Okay. Go on, is it related to this?
Yes.
Okay, go on then.
Is a group a team? Because I'm looking at Office 365 and I'm seeing teams.
It's different. It's different. You're about 10 minutes ahead of me. Yep. So reel it in. Good. It's a good question. Just early. Okay. So people didn't sound that excited about Planner, like nodding. Oh, that's a smile. A smile was excitement. Okay, we'll give you that. One person's excited about Planner. So for those of you that haven't seen it yet, which is probably why you're not excited about it, is it sits somewhere between Microsoft Excel and Microsoft Project. Yep. So there's a big gap between there. So Excel we can use for well, anything. It's just an empty space, isn't it? And you can type in. You could type in tasks or a schedule, and you could colour the cells in, and it can look nice. They have great charts, but you have to do it yourself in Excel. You have to build your tasks and your schedule and whatever you're going to do. You basically have to put the effort in. Up above that, we could buy separate licenses for Microsoft Project, Project Professional, Project Server. That lets us do baseline and variance analysis on projects, so we can see what the plan was originally and then where it screwed up, down to the exact day that we went wrong and the exact task that we overspent on. So that's really good fun if you like project management. But that costs more. That's not part of most people's licenses, so we normally have to pay extra for that. So somewhere between this amazing project tool and just a blank Excel spreadsheet is Planner. We get Planner as part of an Office 365 group. I do like Planner. I've decided recently I like a lot of these things. This might be the sunshine. I could be part of it. You can also go into a Planner window. So the home page that I had before with all the tiles on, all the buttons of the apps. From there you can go into Planner and you can go and make a new plan. You'll never guess what. If you do that, you get a group. So you don't just get a plan, you also get SharePoint and mail and everything else. So if you want a plan, you get a group. And if you want a group, you get a plan anyway. So it seems like plan's going to be around for a while. It's pretty embedded into these things. And that's not the end of it. Microsoft definitely love these groups at the minute because some of this stuff's not come out yet, but it's documented by Microsoft, so we can kind of talk about it. So at the minute we have a video portal. People just getting used to the video portal. So that's going. So we'll have a new version of the video portal that will be coming. We're going to have 2 versions of the video to begin with, and then everything will merge. So that'll be good. And if you go and make a stream, if you go and make a channel in the new video portal, that'll get you a group as well. So all this newer stuff is hooking into groups. It's not just a little thing on the side. I think you guys said earlier, you couldn't really switch that bit off. Yeah, no. So whether we like it or not, this is all kind of really hooked in. Oh, as an administrator, so if I'm a tenant admin in Office 365 and I go in to make a new distribution list, for emailing people, it tries to trick me into making one of these groups as well. So even as an admin, I'm not immune from this. If I go in and say I want a new group, it'll say, oh, do you want an Office 365 group? And I'll be like, no, just an email group, thank you. So unless you're very careful, you're going to make these as well, because these are email enabled as well. So connect all that together. So any user could make one of these, and then this will go into your global address list, and they'll have a SharePoint site collection. Yeah, so quite big changes. So the good news is I like it, so it's fine. So I feel like that makes it okay. But definitely takes a bit of getting used to. But definitely the underlying idea of grouping together a combination of tools as a quick start, I quite like that. So I don't have to phone my Exchange team and my SharePoint team and get the okay for all this stuff. By default I could order one of these things up. I'm just in a meeting. Within a couple of minutes it's created, we're all using it. We've got an email address, we've got a SharePoint site, we've got a planner, we're creating our tasks. So it's kind of a unit of functionality. It's really powerful.
Do global policies and stuff like that attached to these groups? Because obviously if you give it a free-for-all, data governance is just going to go absolutely berserk.
Yeah, so there's more about this in the next session in terms of the limits of that. So there are a few settings. In terms of the user interface, there's not many settings. But in the next session we'll go through that in a bit more detail. But you're right, I can be positive about it because I live in the training room and I just drift around between companies. I don't have to deal with the stuff 6 months down the line.
Sorry, can I just share some of my opinions here?
Oh, go on, yeah.
We confuse the group as with a group of technologies or group of applications. For me, the group is simply just group of people. And everything you're talking about is the application or technology you can apply to this group.
Yeah, so you start with the group of people with an objective, so whether they're a committee or a project team or just a group of people that happen to be sat together today.
So for me, the group is not any tools, it's not group of tools, it's just group of people. It's everything you're talking about is those technology you can apply to this logic group.
Yeah. And what this is doing is it's speeding things up. So rather than that group of going out and requesting all these different functionality and the security group and all those things, they can define themselves as a group. We're a group with a Friday club group, whatever it is, film club group, the dog lovers group, the ride a bike to work group. There'll probably be all these great things. What makes it specific at the moment, though, is when you have a group, you get this. This is the objects you get in a group. So although it's a quick start, it's not that configurable. So if we're used to SharePoint, which a lot of us are, we're used to things like site templates. So we can have standard templates that we roll out within our businesses. A group at the minute, we don't really get much configuration of. Yep, so that's how I was able to define this as a group at the minute, because if you request a planner or a group or try and make an Office 365 group, this is what we'll get at the moment. So a lot of the stuff that's in there is old stuff we've had for years and years, but it's just grouped in a different way. So a really good question that came up then was, is Teams different? So Teams just takes things one step further, and this, to be honest, I think we can say this is confusing, because basically groups came out and we were just starting to get used to that, and then not long after Teams came out. Yeah, so that's a bit overwhelming. It's kind of a similar idea. So when I create a team, which is a separate thing to a group at the moment, when I create a team, one of the things that happens is I get to use a different client tool. So on my local computer, I can have a client that I install, or I can do it in the web browser, and it gives me a slightly different way of managing the information. There's also a really good mobile app as well. So I will define a little bit more in a moment what is extra with Teams, but the client tool's a unique thing, and then the really good mobile app's also a special point. We can take existing Office 365 groups and connect them to a team. So they are definitely different things. At the moment, that connection process is not perfect. So for example, if I've got a group and we've been doing conversations in the group, so like text messaging and emojis and sharing links, and I connect that group to my team, I don't get to see all those conversations in my team. The conversations piece in the team is separate. Yeah, so although we can connect some of these things together, it's not like a flawless process. And again, if I go ahead and create a team, behind the scenes it has the functionality of a group as well. One of the things we're going to see, or we'll talk a bit more about in a moment, is that teams are more customizable. So as a starting point, when we first get a team, it has a security group and it has a few of the basic objects, but it's actually then more customizable. So we can add a series of extra objects into the team. So it's still a security object, it's still mail enabled, but we have more customization. So we'll build on that in the next couple of slides.
Do you see Teams replacing SharePoint team sites?
It's really difficult because there's also is a new team site from SharePoint. In fact, there's two of those. I think at the moment, if you think about, it's hard to separate them as well, because if you have a team, you're getting SharePoint anyway, because behind it is a SharePoint site. So what the groups and the teams are both doing is combining together multiple pieces of functionality. Yep, so rather than me going to a mail area or a document management area or a conversations area or a video area, they're bringing things together. So instead of me having to jump between so many, yeah, most of what you go into is stuff we've had for years and years, and then there's a few new pieces as well, but it's really like a front end to these things.
Does Teams replace Yammer?
I think officially it doesn't.
Well, Microsoft Yammer is supposed to make connections between people you don't normally work with. It's useful for you to actually have conversations with people you actually work with.
Yeah.
That's how it's playing.
See, one of the latest Microsoft event, they do say eventually team will replace Yammer, maybe just from some of the technicians.
Yeah, I think there's limits at the minute on the amount of people and those sorts of things. So I think at the moment it's not there yet. Yeah, it's not there. But there's overlap between all of this stuff because it's made of all the same stuff. So it is SharePoint behind it. It is Skype behind it. You know, the components that we're often used to already. Okay, so the rest of these slides is all going to build on this, right? So I'm not just leaving Teams behind. But I do really like the client tool. So the client tool for Teams is great. And just to confirm, so for example, I'm not going to try and demo this because of the Wi-Fi was playing up, but if I'm in a team and I've got the team client tool, so I can go in, I could request a team, I can have it available very, very quickly, and within that team I can have a series of people, and I can see them down the right-hand side, so I can see who's in this team from a security point of view. And at the drop of a hat, I could decide that all those people need to be on a video conference call with me now, not like schedule it for tomorrow and send them an Outlook invite. But I'm currently looking at a few documents in the team site. I want those guys to be in a video conference call now. There's a button to say jump these people into a video conference call. Straight away that comes up on my screen. Do you want to use your webcam, or do you want to give this a name? And then from there I can choose the people that I want to bring in. So it already has this established team of people, and then I can choose to just click on them once to jump them into that meeting. They can still accept or decline it, of course. But that's the other thing that people tend to talk about at the minute with Teams. It's really great for these agile groups of people that are responding to things, like emergencies. Right, quick, we need to make a decision now. We didn't know we were going to have a meeting today at all. We're all in different offices, we're working from home, it doesn't matter. If we're in that window, we're working on our documents, we can jump straight into that, audio, video, text messaging, it's all there straight away. Okay, right, I have to get you ready for this. So we're still in a situation at the minute where we feel like we still don't know which tools to use. Luckily, we've got 9 minutes left, so we've got a while to work it out. But I thought back, and I thought, how did I learn to make decisions in my life? And there was one game in particular that taught me a good way of making decisions, so I'll share that with you now.
It's Guess Who!
The mystery-based game.
The fun is trying to guess when you play Guess Who.
Is your person bald? Yes.
A very good question.
Does your person have a beard? Uh-huh.
An excellent clue.
The fun is trying to guess when you play Guess
Do
Who.
you wear glasses?
Yep. Uh-oh.
That means it's not you.
Hold on.
Or you.
Bye-bye.
Or you.
Toodaloo.
I guess you're Tom. You win. Let's play again.
The fun is trying to guess when you play Guess Who.
Game cards do not actually talk.
That's the best bit. It's the end bit. So we can kind of play the same game. It obviously won't be as fun, but we can kind of play the same game with the tools. And I've had to cheat a little bit to try and make it so we can actually see a bit on the slides, because the table, if I put all the products in and maybe all the decision-making points, it wouldn't fit on the slide, right? There'd be too many. But if I just pick out some of the key products, and again, trying to focus in on some of the more challenging ones like the teams and the groups. So we've just put in some headings to begin with about, what might we use these tools, or what specific functionality do they have or not have. So then when people come to me with a business requirement, I can actually narrow down the choices. So it's not as fun. I told you it wouldn't be as fun. But it's just practical decision making. Like the groups tool or the teams tool is not some miracle. It's a combination of specific functions. So have we got a place we could store files? Yeah, we've got loads. So if someone just asks me for that, that really doesn't get me any closer or much closer to knowing what to do. Can we send emails into it? Microsoft have started to remove a lot of the email functionality from SharePoint. What was the most recent one? In SharePoint we had mailboxes or site mailboxes, and that was deprecated. Yeah, so some of the email specific options are disappearing from SharePoint, so that's going to start to change. If I want to be able to email things in or send emails from there, that's going to maybe influence what's going on. Can we co-author, so that whether that means just have a secure area to work, or perhaps in Microsoft means physically both work at the same time, even that often doesn't narrow things down much. And then we start to get to the real time, and that helps us a little bit. So chat, audio, video. So we just said Teams, for example, allows me to jump straight from a document into a video conversation with a group of people. So if I take one example, I need to store and collaborate on files. So I'd be flipping down Brian and Fred and Jesse, whoever was there. So I need to store files, okay, that rules out a few things. I need to collaborate, that rules out a few more, and then I'd need to go back to them with that business requirement and say, look, that's not enough. Either I could show them demos and trying to influence them. I need to use video conferencing. Well, that's good, because that helps me now, so I can actually get down to the products that match that. So based on that requirement, we can get there. Sometimes it's not as easy as that. Sometimes someone might give you a requirement and there'll still be a few different choices. Then it might come a little bit down to what type of company you are. Do you like to live on the edge? Do you drive a fast car? Then the latest thing is for you. If you like to stay at home, don't like people, then maybe some of the older stuff is for you. You don't want to use the cutting edge stuff. And sometimes it can be as simple as that. In a company, they'll go, oh, we're an engineering company, we don't want the newest stuff, we're traditional. Yeah, that's okay. That's okay. The old tools are good. The old tools are getting updated anyway. Yeah, so you're still going to get a good experience with those. So what I'm thinking is I'm going to extend this. So this is what we have at the minute, but I'm going to extend that with some of the core criteria as well. So, we'll build on that. Okay. So then to help us make our decisions a bit more efficiently, now we've talked about the bigger picture, we could drill back down into a few specifics. I'm going to go relatively quick on this because just timing is up against us a little bit. So if we decide, let's forget groups and teams for a moment and just go back to SharePoint on its own. So we're in SharePoint Online. Even just, am I going to use SharePoint, has a question, which is, do I use classic SharePoint or modern SharePoint? Has anyone come up against this in their tenants recently? So if you go into the SharePoint button right now in tenant and go new SharePoint site, you get a modern site. And it doesn't even ask you anymore, do you want a team site? Do you want a blog? It just says, here's a team site, what do you want to call it? So that's a bit of a change. If you go into the admin window, more behind the scenes, then you can go in and choose, I want a classic SharePoint site. Is there much difference between a classic site and a modern site? Well, not really, apart from the homepage being different, where you store the files being different in terms of the library settings, the site contents page being different. Other than that, they're very similar. So basically, they've completely changed. So actually even deciding I'm going to use SharePoint is really difficult at the minute. So a lot of companies are still using classic SharePoint, effectively clinging on to that because that works as close to what they're used to as possible. But actually more things now are going towards these modern sites. So if I create a team or a group, I'm going to get a modern SharePoint site. Yeah, it's going to have these modern libraries with less ribbons and all those settings. So again, even if you go in and you create a classic site by going through the old way, there we go, that's dramatic. So even if you create a classic site trying to get one of the old-fashioned ones, because of the way it works now, you're still going to get the modern libraries. And if you go to make a new page, you'll get modern pages. Did we know there's 4 types of pages now in SharePoint Online? 4. You still make all of them as well, they're all still there. For me, SharePoint though is still a core place to be. If I want somewhere that we can apply lots of governance to, be able to create templates, be able to configure things, SharePoint. If I want somewhere that's more bespoke, like building my own application to do something specific for a process, then SharePoint is where I'll be, because at the moment the groups and teams don't give me as much customization. Even actually when you create a group or a team and it gives you a SharePoint site, those sites are still limited in functionality. I don't know if it'll stay like that forever, but at the minute they are. Yeah, so if you get a SharePoint site through a group or a team, you get less functionality. Some of the things that you miss, to be honest, are things like branding and those sorts of things. So a lot of the practical document management stuff will be there in the modern sites that you've created through groups and teams as well. And then just some of the other components, I'm not going to spend very long on these, but so this one was an example of email. So even just deciding, we're going to use email as part of Office 365, even after that there's choices. Are we going to just use the browser-based version of email? Because that's nearly, it's pretty close to being possible, right? I could go in, I could create my emails, I can sort out signatures, I can deal with rules, so it moves things into folders, I can view other people's mailboxes, and I can do that all in the browser. So why would I need the client anymore? Do I need to install Outlook 2016? So even there's choices, and then against different mobile devices. The good news is these sorts of matrix that Microsoft provide, where it actually tells us, actually you can use nearly all the functionality everywhere. It's going to vary a bit. I know I've got some Mac users in today as well. You're going to be the minority though in this session today probably. But even for those guys, when they do give us functionality like the Mac Office 2016 for Mac, it's pretty rich. It's not just a cut down version. Delve, really quick one. So the scary thing about Delve is it gives you a single place where you can see everything. So at the moment, if I've got stuff stored in SharePoint and OneDrive and all sorts of other storage areas, I can go into Delve and I can search across everything. So if you know that your security is not up to scratch, if you've got stuff stored where it shouldn't be with the wrong permissions on, Delve is going to surface that stuff. Yep, so we have quite a few companies we work with at the minute where they can't use Delve because it shows up their security problems, where they've migrated stuff quickly, they know it's not right, and Delve will let you click on a person and see what they've been working on today. Yeah, so if their security is wrong, that person's going to be in trouble real quick. They might have got away with it on the network drives because no one could find anything anyway. But if we're in SharePoint Online with Delve, then it could be more of an issue. Something else in Delve, we've got favorites and boards. So imagine I'm searching across all these different areas that I've got access to. So I've got all these, let's say SharePoint sites and OneDrives for now, but it could be other areas. I could search across all those and I can add them as favorites or boards. So that means I can go into Delve, and from there I can get to all my key documents that I'm interested in. So if I am worried about having SharePoint and OneDrive and groups and all this other stuff, Delve actually goes across it all at the minute, so I can have my own favorites area. Yeah, so I can have my own. So there might be a policy that I look at that's in one site, I could add that as a favorite. There might be a procedure from another one, I could add that. So I can go into Delve and that might be my favorite, and I go straight in there in the morning. So we're almost getting to the point where it doesn't matter so much where the files are as a user, because we can search across them, and I know that's a scary thing for other people, but for a user, it could be a good thing. And the boards is like the Pinterest. Pinterest? No one's excited about Pinterest. No, normally there's one person. Okay, that's fine. All right, I'm going to just do these real quick. We're going to do like 5 minutes, then we're going to swap over again. Excel, Word, Excel, PowerPoint, from both SharePoint and OneDrive, all within groups and teams. We can do collaboration and co-authoring. And again, these tables tell us from Microsoft that actually it's a really good story. So whether we're using the browser-based versions of these tools, or whether we're using a Mac-based version, we're getting a good experience. So we do have choice. We do have choice. It is possible. OneNote, very briefly, never-ending pages, sections and pages tags. So if I'm creating a series of notes, like for a meeting, at the moment I might do that in Word, for example. In OneNote I can go through, I can create these pages that can be vast. I can put a whole variety of content in, kind of pictures, links. I can use these tags so I can mark things as important. The tag that I've not put on there, because I got told off last time, is you can tag things as being a password. So maybe don't do that. Don't put your passwords in your OneNote and tag them as passwords. That's the thing. There is a tag to say this is a password. So don't do that. I've took that out of the example now. Okay, so again, almost everything you create now. So if we create a SharePoint site, we can OneNote in there. If we have OneDrive, we can OneNote in there. If we create a group or a team, we can OneNote in there. So that core component is kind of across all of those pieces. OneDrive, I'm not going to do much on this because I think a bit more comes up in the next session, but just to confirm, it is my personal storage area, so I'm completely in charge of it. One of the things that means is by default I can click on it and share it with anyone, and that also includes creating anonymous access links. So I can click on a file that I've stored in my OneDrive, which is completely confidential, but because I've put it in my OneDrive, by default I can create an anonymous access link, and that link even could allow people to edit the file. So I could email that link to someone outside of my organization, and by default they could pass that link to someone else, and even they could use that link. And what does it say when we look at the auditing? It kind of says like anonymous edit. Yep. So there is a lot of policy that you can put in around that, but by default it's very open. Yep.
Can you change that default?
Yeah, you can. So you can set that. So for example, you can set that at the the tenant level, and then some of these settings, like the sharing settings, you can also set per site collection in SharePoint, because you may well decide there's areas where, like marketing and things like that, you just want anyone to look at your marketing documents. You're just glad if anyone looks at them at all. So we want spend all this money making these beautiful presentations and beautiful pamphlets to give out. So that maybe is appropriate, but in other areas, then yeah, it would definitely be locked down. So the video portal is going to become Stream. Apparently Microsoft are going to move any videos that you have in the video portal over to Stream for you. So for a while you'll have both, and then eventually you'll just have this Stream. Stream, let's call it Video Portal for now, because that's what we have today. I looked at it yesterday, it was still Video Portal so far. So the Video Portal is a great place to share videos across the organization. So if we've got like high quality videos or even medium quality videos, could be training videos, could be new starter videos, anything like that, then the Video Portal is a nice place to do it, rather than putting stuff out to YouTube and then embedding back. Yep. So we can do that. So we can put it into our Video Portal, which is great. Also, it's smart as well, so when people are streaming the videos, it detects their available network. So it is optimized. It's not just a SharePoint site, it is optimized. Probably one that a lot of people are familiar with already, and this is one that the name kept changing, isn't it? So it's like OCS, then Link, and now Skype for Business. again, Skype and the presence piece in particular is hooked into a lot of the newer stuff, but Skype on its own still works as well. So we can search for people, we can set our statuses, which is a good way of telling people we're busy before they ask. I quite like that, I'm busy, just set my status before I even log in. We can also do the chat and voice and video and the screen share, but actually all that stuff's built in now into Teams as well. And Skype itself doesn't really do document management. So if I want a combination of this video, audio, chat, and document management, like file-related stuff, then that's a good fit where Teams would work. So almost see Teams is like an extended version of Skype. It's a bit more than that again, but that's kind of the space where it fits. Yeah, because Teams actually has the SharePoint piece built in as well. So we've got a decision point there. Sway. And this is, I don't know, is anyone excited about Sway? That's a harder one to be excited about. So I'm normally saying at the minute, I'm kind of less excited about this one right now, but Sway is somewhere between a PowerPoint presentation and a blog post. So it's web-based. It helps you bring in content. If you were a lazy student at school, it would be great, because you can go in and say, make me a new Sway page, base it on Leicester City. So what it would do is it would go out to or King Richard or something. So it would go out on the internet. It would find pictures and content, and it actually builds up this this Sway page from it, and then you could just show it to your teacher, and you're basically done. But the other thing that's nice about it is it's very interactive. So with it being a web page, people can scroll through it. It can be animated. It can have emphasis. You can apply designs to it. So it's a really quick interactive way of building a presentation. And that actually, it's particularly good if you're not going to host the presentation, if people are going to flick through it themselves. Yeah, so they see it as a web page, and they can either flick up or scroll across, depending on what device they're on, and they get a really good experience. To be honest, I think out of all the stuff that gets switched off, I think Sway to begin with at the minute is often one that gets switched off. Yeah, I think it's relatively easy to switch that one off, and it doesn't have that many unique pieces of functionality. And then just because we're down on time, I've got these three together. So if I take Flow and Power Apps to begin with, for years we've wanted new forms tools and new workflow tools for SharePoint, and we were quite excited when Microsoft said we'd got Flow and Power Apps, which is the forms tool, and actually then we found out that it's not SharePoint based. It's something that stands on its own, and you can plug it into SharePoint. It doesn't really care about SharePoint, which is a bit sad. So the good news is, for people that aren't just obsessed with SharePoint, you can use the workflow tools and the forms tools with loads of different business systems. But you can use them in SharePoint as well. So I can go in and I can make something like an approval process, particularly if I was using my mobile phone as well. So I can fill in a form on my phone for something like an expense claim. So the form might be created using Power Apps. And the form could contain business logic. So it gives me a drop down that's relevant to me. It performs some calculations to make sure I'm not trying to claim too much money. And they can be beautiful. They can have charts on and things like that. So the forms can be really nice and rich. And again, you can build those in the browser. Then automatically that data could pass down to SharePoint. Yeah, as one place. It apparently is not the only place, but SharePoint it can go down to. So for mobile users, that can be neat. And then Flow can allow us to connect together different systems. You probably wouldn't use Flow to do a whole migration, like to move documents as a bulk move, but you could do things really simple, like every time a file gets uploaded to this Dropbox over here, automatically move a copy of that to my OneDrive. So if you're going through a process trying to get away from Dropbox or another Google Drive or some other thing, Flow has loads of connections just already in there, although the product's still relatively new, that can allow us to do alerts, as well as moving and copying and all sorts of different things. So that's one of the good things about Flow. Although it's not completely based in SharePoint, it's able to connect to all these different systems. Okay, so in terms of customizing things, Flow and Power Apps are a nice place to be, but they're not direct replacements for the SharePoint 2013 workflow or InfoPath. Yeah, they're different in what they do. They're mobile focused, they're not SharePoint focused. The last one I've got on the end there is social. So just to mention Yammer. Yammer's a difficult one at the minute, isn't it? It has been since Microsoft bought Yammer. So we had SharePoint 2013, which had news feeds and profiles and tagging and community sites for forums, and then at the same time Microsoft bought Yammer. So Microsoft have consistently told us that Yammer is the best thing ever, and that they've not updated the news feeds and the social tools within SharePoint. So when people have been making that decision at the minute, when they go into Office 365, you have to choose. You either say you're going to have Yammer or you're going to have SharePoint Social, because the two things are so similar, it wouldn't make sense to have both. And then a while ago, Microsoft made it default to Yammer. So if you're a new tenant, Yammer will be the default unless you switch it back to being the SharePoint Social. And then we'll just do this as the very last slide. So in terms of being productive, and well, this is being productive and improving user adoption. The main thing you can do is be up to date. So unless you know about all the tools, then you're not going to be able to make good decisions about them, because you know, a good decision for me in my business and my training department might be completely a bad decision for you. You know, I'm saying Sway doesn't excite me because I already use PowerPoint and I love PowerPoint for that. But you might say, no, I never got on with PowerPoint. Sway's the best thing ever. So definitely having a good overview and understanding. So sessions like this, and then more detailed sessions from Microsoft and from ourselves as well. A few things to mention there. The Office 365 roadmap is worth a look. So as a normal user, if you just Google or Bing 365 roadmap, you'll get to the Fast Track 365 roadmap site. On there it tells you what's happened recently, what's about to happen, what we were going to do but was cancelled. So it gives you a kind of list. And one of the nice things on there is you can filter it by product. So you can find out what's been going on with Excel. So if your remit is really just Excel and Word, you can go onto that roadmap and you can filter it down. Yeah. So it's worth a look. Also, if you're an admin, you can go into the Message Center. So when you're in Office 365 and you go into the admin window, you can go into the Message Center. What that'll do is tell you again what's going on, but you have to be an admin to see that. So the sort of thing it'll tell you about in there is if there's going to be a big change. So for example, when Microsoft were going to be deprecating site mailboxes from SharePoint, so they're saying you'll get a message in there, we see that one or more of your SharePoint sites is using this functionality. You need to not be using it anymore because it's going. So it'll tell you this is an action point. This is something you need to do. Whereas other things will just be informational. You know, you don't need to do anything. But every now and again there'll be these things you need to react to, because you'll have to tell your users about it and maybe make an admin setting as to when you're going to move across. Yeah, because otherwise that'll be a big shock. Something else you can do to get that message center, if you are an Office 365 admin, you can download the Office 365 admin tool for your mobile device. Anyone use that? Yeah, only a couple of people. It's really good. So if you've got admin permissions in your 365 tenant, go to your store on your phone, get the Office 365 admin. It's really good. So as well as being able to do practical things like resetting people's passwords, those sorts of things, you can also see the message center from there as well. And you'll also get alerts about issues with service. So if there's a problem with Exchange, for example, it'll tell you on your phone first. Yeah, you'll get your notification. I promise we'll stop. This is the last slide. Training. So training's got to be a part of it. When we're working with other customers, quite often people make decisions without really trying things. They just often even just go from the name of it. They just don't like the sound of something, and then they just want to know how to switch it off. So just trying things, just, you know, at least during the first phase or when something's new, just try it. Also bear in mind that at the moment when Microsoft are bringing out new products, they often bring out the new products when they're only half finished. I guess they don't phrase it like that, do they? Have a different phrase for it? A preview, I think they call it now. Preview is a bit more positive, isn't it? So when something first comes out and you try it and you go, oh, this is awful, maybe give it a few months and put a note in your diary and come back to it. So the Teams app, the Teams tool that I said before is really good, and there's a mobile app for it, and it's video conferencing. The app came out on the phone and it had no video conference built in. Yeah, so the whole cool bit about it was it had files and video, which none of the other pieces did on their own. So, but now there's an update, and it now has the video feed and the audio on the mobile app. So I just had to wait a bit, and now it's got up to kind of what I expected it to do. Make sure that internally you're encouraging people as well. So we talked about ninjas and champions and all these different people today. So, so obviously you're enthused about all this stuff or scared about it, depending on which reason you're here for. And hopefully you can share the enthused bit with the business. So hopefully we've seen loads of tools today. Again, not seen demos of all of them, but at least talked about tools that can solve all sorts of problems in the business. There's probably things at the minute that are not optimized or things that are not secure. There's all these problems, so hopefully these tools can help. So talking to people in the business, understanding their problems and helping them map. You could play that guess who game with them, slide the things out until you're left with the choices that you then demo to them. And again, I'm going to build that out a bit more. I'm going to add some more products into the guess who. I'm sure we can get that matrix so it's a bit more foolproof. And then internally, there's loads of ways you could do it. Pilots, webinars, blogs. So mostly things that you could do yourselves just to energize people and keep them moving forwards, especially for new products. So we've seen that being really successful with a lot of our customers, either ourselves delivering or the customer. So when something brand new comes out, they might just do a 1-hour webinar, make it available to everyone in the business, like at lunchtime. And it's just a way of saying, hey, we're sharing new information. Here's something that's coming soon. Before we go live with it, here's an hour on it. And again, feeding back to the business through newsletters, blogs. So where people have done well, that and you think that fits in with what you want to tell people, that can be a nice way of sharing that. So that was more than another minute, wasn't it? So I apologise. And then we're going to do questions at the end. What do you think? Yeah, because your governance bit will fit in. Yeah. So we'll hand over if that's okay. Thank you for your enthusiasm.